Welcome to MojoPlays, and today we're exploring facts you may or may not know about the Legend of Zelda, the Minish Cap. But before we dive in, we publish new content all week long, so be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. The inspiration for the Picori. The Picori race, also known as the Minish, is one of the more delightful aspects about the game, and like many other elements from the Zelda series, their existence is derived from folklore. They seem to be inspired by the Korupokoru, a miniature race found in folktales of the Ainu people, a group from northern Japan. Stories depict them as friendly, leaving gifts and trading with people, but not wanting to be seen. However, this isn't the only source of inspiration. There are also miniature people found in folktales of Scotland and Germany who perform chores and tasks while humans sleep. They're at the center of the famous Brothers Grimm story, The Elves and the Shoemaker, which directly inspired a sequence in the Minish Cap in which Link gets the Pegasus boots. Creating Ezlo. Ezlo remains a favorite companion among Zelda fans, and there's an interesting bit of history behind his creation. The mechanic to have Link shrink to a minuscule size was inspired by the Nat Hat from Four Swords. During an interview with the Japanese magazine Nintendo Dream, graciously translated by shmuplations.com, director Hidemaru Fujibayashi expanded on this. The Nat Hat came from something series creator Shigeru Miyamoto said, about wanting to get inside treasure chests and make mischief. However, Fujibayashi also said that his desire to include a companion came from the lack of one in Oracle of Ages and Seasons, which he also directed. He was conflicted about there not being a Navi-like character to guide players, and so having one was one of the first things he decided for the Minish Cap. He originally thought Link would wear different hats and masks, but decided that one talking hat would be best. Stalled development. The Minish Cap was developed in partnership with Capcom by a studio called Flagship. Development started not long after production wrapped up on the Oracle games, also developed by Flagship. While most games have traditional development periods, the team actually had to stop midway as they had been hired to create Four Swords for the A Link to the Past port on Game Boy Advance. Although a stalled development can often spell misfortune, that wasn't the case here. Work picked back up in early 2003 and, for all intents and purposes, had no further hurdles. A necessary expansion. The Hyrule Castle town in the Minish Cap is one of my personal favorite iterations in the series. It already has a lot of charm on its first layer, but while in Minish form, when you're able to literally explore all of its nooks and crannies, it becomes even better. At one point, Fujibayashi and his team thought of having the entire game take place solely in the town. Obviously, this would have been a huge departure from previous games, where Link ventures to different lands. Presumably, the developers realized that even though Link can shrink down to explore new areas, that Hyrule wouldn't have been big enough to fill a full game. The unfinished side quest. At a certain point in the game, Link will meet Din, Nehru, and Furore, named for the golden goddesses and, more importantly, the oracles from Flagship's previous duology. You can then go through a side quest, finding houses for two of them, while the third is sadly left waiting for a home that will never come. When a lot of players go through this quest the first time, it seems like it will finish after a third house. Now, many believe it to be a sly reference to the Oracle games. Flagship originally envisioned it to be a trilogy, but the technology of linking 3 games across the Game Boy Color turned out to be too complicated. And so, the one focusing on Furore was cut, competing with the DS. Nintendo is always wary of releasing more than one big thing at a time. The Minish Cap was released in North America in January of 2005. This was a conscious choice based on the release of the DS, which was released in the same region in November of 2004.
This is Nintendo DS.
Interestingly, Nintendo of Europe chose to release the game in December, as the DS wasn't due out there until March of 2005. This may be the reason why the European version features several noteworthy bugs that the North American one doesn't. One of the most famous deals with fusing kinstones with the Farmer Eni. If you start the kinstone process but then leave the screen without completing it, you lose the option, as well as the resulting side quests. Following Wonka's footsteps. Sticking with Nintendo of Europe, that branch of the company released 25,000 special edition matte gold Game Boy Advance SPs as a promotion for the game. Naturally, these also came with a copy of the Minish Cap packaged in with them, but 6 lucky buyers found golden tickets with their special editions, and were then given a second, much more valuable SP, one that was plated in 24-karat gold. A 7th was also given away as a magazine promotion. Since only 7 of these exist, we imagine they're quite the prized collectibles. The Gust Jar. The Picori may be the biggest example of an adaptation of Folklore in the Minish Cap, but they're not the only one. Link earns the Gust Jar in the game's first dungeon, the Deepwood Shrine. It can pull in items and enemies, as well as be used to push lily pads down waterways while Link stands on them. This item was inspired by a gourd that can suck up anything found in Journey to the West, the famous 16th century novel which pulls from various Chinese folktales. The Pikmin Connection. Puffstools are simple enemies encountered early in the game. They spray spores on the ground that slow Link's movement, but can be easily stunned with the Gust Jar before being defeated with the sword. Interestingly, they share a name with an enemy from Pikmin. They have a similar red cap design, but have a different effect of brainwashing Pikmin with their spores. This may have been a reference only put in by the English localization team. In the Japanese versions of Minish Cap and Pikmin, the enemies do not share a name. Lon Butter. There are multiple elements that were removed from the Minish Cap before its release, some more interesting than others. One item, which text and a sprite can be found for in the game's files, is Lon Butter. All we know is that the item existed at one point. Link can still purchase Lon Milk in the game, but if Link would have purchased butter the same way, or had to go through a side quest to get it, would it have healed him or be used for something else? All of that is unclear. We would get butter later in the series as a cooking ingredient in Breath of the Wild, but it seems unlikely that cooking was considered for Minish Cap. Unused enemies. Sticking with removed content, there are some unused enemies that didn't make the cut. Some are left over from 4 swords still found in the game's code. There are different colored Zols and Gels, blob-like enemies, as well as Bubbles, sentient flying fireball-like enemies, both of which have appeared in several older games. There are also 2 unused variants of Dark Nuts that have been found, one purple and one golden. Rather than these being different power levels, the team may have just been testing different colors. Some players have managed to spawn them into the game where they are similar to the black Dark Nuts, the strongest variant. The Absent Fire Rod. The Fire Rod has appeared in multiple Zelda games, though not the Minish Cap. But it seems that at one point, it was present. A sprite for the item has been found in the game's code, as well as pickup text that reads, "You got the Fire Rod, this mystical rod shoots forth mighty flames." Additionally, in the European version of the game, the figurine of the Ice Wiz robe you can unlock at Karlov's shop lists the Fire Rod as its weakness. Perhaps another consequence of the game releasing earlier there than in North America. Link gets the Flame Lantern in this game, used to light torches and set fire to enemies. Since it was functionally similar to this item, that's probably why the Fire Rod was removed. Unused ties to Wind Waker. One of the most interesting bits of cut content in the Minish Cap concerns a connection to the Wind Waker. There is artwork for 3 stained glass windows present in the game's Hyrule Castle map test, which depict the Great Deku Tree, Valoo, and Jaboon, the 3 guardian deities in Wind Waker. We have to assume that because Minish Cap was planned to be the earliest adventure before Skyward Sword was released, that these were scrapped so as not to confuse players. Interestingly, sprites for the 3 goddess pearls from Wind Waker also sit among the game's code, but no one knows what role they would have played here. The problem with figurines. The Minish Cap features the most infamous piece of heart in the entire series. It requires Link to earn all figurines at Karlov's shop by spending mysterious shells, which are collected throughout the game. This is done through a gacha mechanic. The more figurines you earn, the more shells you're meant to spend, as the chance of getting a new one gets lower and lower. It becomes a huge grind. Even more problematic is the fact that the game is actually lying to you. YouTuber The Plant Commander did an experiment using save states once the Minish Cap was added to Switch Online. They found that the percentage doesn't actually matter. Each time you enter the room, the threshold you need to reach is changed. You don't have a chance of getting a new figurine based on what the percentage is. You will get a new figurine as long as you spend the proper amount of shells. But you'd have no way of knowing this without testing it with save states. Reimagining music. The music for the Minish Cap was composed by longtime Capcom collaborator Mitsuhiko Takano. It's so far the only game in the Zelda series that he has composed music for, but it was apparently a huge honor for him. In an interview with Nintendo Power in 2005, Fujibayashi claimed Takano was a big Zelda fan, and didn't want to miss the opportunity to transition key musical themes from the series into a new game. When asked what percentage of the game's music was new, Fujibayashi estimated that only 30% of the soundtrack was new, while the remaining 70% were reworked themes from older games. Battle theme. One piece of music that many of us likely thought was new is the theme that plays during mini-boss fights. But this is actually one of the many that were reworked. You probably just didn't realize it. This piece is also the battle theme that can be found in Zelda 2: The Adventure of Link. Even if that wasn't one of the least popular entries in the series, this battle theme is only found in the Japanese version, and was replaced in other regions for unknown reasons. So it's a fun musical Easter egg that most players probably won't pick up on. Bringing concepts to life. The Minish Cap featured the largest amount of concept art done for a Zelda game up to that point. According to Fujibayashi, this was because he found that, while working on other titles, it was hard to translate the ideas in his head into words. So he worked diligently with a concept artist to create tons of storyboards, which made it much easier to convey what he wanted. This impressed series producer Eiji Aonuma, who stated Nintendo's process was far different. Instead of creating as much concept art as Fujibayashi did, they focused on creating ideas that could be implemented as game data from the start. But he said he could feel the passion behind the artwork and was happy for the team to use it as a starting point. The next step. As you might have guessed, Hidemaru Fujibayashi was a Capcom employee when he teamed up with Nintendo for the Oracle games, Four Swords, and then the Minish Cap. In that Nintendo Power interview, when asked if Nintendo was considering another collaboration, Aonuma didn't hide how pleased he was with Fujibayashi's work, stating he would like to continue working with the team, but that no plans had been made. Well, it wouldn't be long before Fujibayashi joined Nintendo to continue work on the series. His first project was 2007's Phantom Hourglass, but he would later jump to directing the bigger games in the series, Skyward Sword, Breath of the Wild, and Tears of the Kingdom. Understanding Hylian. The Hylian language has gone through several iterations across the Zelda series. For the Minish Cap, it's the same style as that seen in the Wind Waker, itself based on Japanese kana. As is the case with other versions, this has long been translated by dedicated players. This leads to a really well-hidden Easter egg in the Hyrule Castle Town Library. during the section where Link shrinks down and must scale a bookcase. The spines of 2 red books with golden text, when translated, read bucket and hose. When looking at the Japanese kana, it's the same phrase said by the fishmen in The Wind Waker, when they mistakenly refer to the Triforce as the Triumph Forks in the English language version. Only those familiar with Japanese kana would pick up on the pun and the reference. Vaati's name. Although he appeared in both Four Swords games, Vaati's appearance in the Minish Cap solidified him as a much more entertaining villain. Since he's often referred to as a wind mage, Nintendo had some fun in naming him. His Japanese name is Gufu, which means tornado, but his English name likely comes from Vata, the Sanskrit word for wind or air. Interestingly, Vata, also known as Vayu, is the name of the Hindu god of winds. Lastly, there's also a group from Dungeons & Dragons called the Vaati who live on the elemental plane of air and practice wind magic. It seems more likely that the Vaati from Zelda and D&D were both named after the Hindu deity, but it's still an interesting thread tying 2 of the biggest fantasy properties together. Do you know of any other things most players might not know about the Minish Cap? Be sure to share them in the comments, and we'll see you next time.